We were more than just friends, we were practically family. Our fathers had been best friends since college and had settled down in the same town after graduation. Rob's father had moved to Prague for work but returned when Rob was 7. Becky and I had known each other since we were in diapers, and Rob joined our little circle when we were 6 and he was 7. From that point on, we grew up together, making a pact to be lifelong friends, just like our parents. When I was 15, Rob and I started dating. It wasn't just a teenage fling, we dated for 2 years and were serious. At least I was. We planned to attend the same college and eventually get married. People often joke that Becky was the third wheel. But in reality, Becky and I were so close that Rob once said he felt like the third wheel between us. In truth, I might have been the extra wheel, as I would later find out. When we were 17, Becky got pregnant. She was terrified and locked herself in the school washroom. I was shocked too, seeing those 2 pink lines. When I asked her who the father was, she just cried and worried about her parents' reaction. She tested twice in front of me, and to calm her down I suggested seeing a doctor before telling her parents. The doctor confirmed her pregnancy, and Becky was so scared she kept it hidden for almost a month. During that month I supported her completely. I bought her supplements, ensured she had proper meals, got her snacks and juices, and provided a shoulder to cry on. She confided in me about her fears, anxiety, and uncertainty. Despite her terror, she never revealed the father's name. Eventually I convinced her to tell her parents before it became obvious. She asked me to be with her when she did, and I agreed. When Becky finally told her parents, they were devastated and called mine to share their distress. Even then, she didn't reveal the father's identity. My parents, seeing her distress, asked her parents to give her time. 2 days later, my mom told me to focus on my studies and stop visiting Becky so often. This restriction puzzled me because my mom had always been protective of Becky. A week later I decided to visit Becky unannounced. I found Rob and his parents there. Both he and Becky were crying, and my parents were there too. My mother tried to send me home, but I demanded to know what was happening. As soon as Rob and Becky saw me, they were shocked, and I realized the truth: Rob was the father. I screamed, accusing them of betraying me, but they pleaded for a chance to explain. I refused to listen, feeling utterly betrayed by both my boyfriend and best friend. My parents dragged me home as I sobbed uncontrollably. I locked myself in my room, crying for days. The betrayal was unimaginable. I had trusted and supported Becky while she was secretly seeing my boyfriend. The worst part was that everyone was more concerned about Becky and her baby than my pain. Becky and Rob tried to contact me, but I shut them out, blocking them on all platforms. Even my parents seemed indifferent to my heartbreak. My mom acted as if I should be happy about the baby, dismissing my feelings and suggesting I'd find another boyfriend soon. My mental state worsened. I couldn't understand how I hadn't seen this coming. My sister, who was dating Becky's brother, also told me to move on and not ruin our family's friendships. School became unbearable without Rob and Becky. I was left alone and bullied. My family was more focused on maintaining their friendship with Becky and Rob's parents than on my well-being. My dad checked on me sometimes, but my mom was the worst, constantly making Becky cookies while I cried alone in my room. As Becky's pregnancy progressed, seeing Rob support her was unbearable. He took her for walks, checkups, and dates to ease her anxiety. My family told me to move on, but it was impossible. We were neighbors, and I saw them daily. My family was always talking about the baby, further deepening my pain. The constant reminders of the betrayal were inescapable. Everywhere I turned, there was a conversation about Becky's baby, a sighting of Rob and Becky together, or an expectation for me to be happy for them. My parents even threw a baby shower for Becky, inviting all our family friends. They expected me to attend, to smile, and to celebrate the arrival of a baby that symbolized the ultimate betrayal. I refused to go, locking myself in my room, but I could still hear the laughter and joy from downstairs. It was as if my feelings were invisible, drowned out by the excitement of a new life. The worst days were when I accidentally ran into them. One evening, I was coming home late from school, having stayed behind to avoid the usual crowd. As I walked past Becky's house, I saw Rob helping her out of a car, carrying bags of baby supplies. They looked so normal, as if they hadn't shattered my world. They saw me too, and for a moment there was a silence that stretched painfully. Then Becky, visibly pregnant and struggling with the weight of her condition, gave me a small, sad smile. Rob looked like he wanted to say something, but I turned away, unable to face them. My isolation grew. My sister was no help, often spending time at Becky's house with her boyfriend. She seemed to have taken Becky's side, viewing the situation as something I just needed to get over. She didn't understand the depth of my hurt. When I tried to talk to her about my feelings, she brushed me off, saying things like, "You have to move on, or it's not the end of the world." But it felt like the end of my world. My two best friends, the people I trusted most, had betrayed me. The support system I thought I had crumbled, leaving me to navigate my pain alone. My grades started to slip as I found it harder and harder to concentrate on my studies. Teachers noticed but didn't press too hard, probably assuming it was just typical teenage angst. Counseling was suggested, but my parents didn't see the point. "What's a counselor going to do?" my mom scoffed. "You need to be strong to move on." Life doesn't stop because of one heartbreak. It felt like a dismissal of my very real, very deep pain. Eventually, I couldn't bear being at home. The constant reminders, the lack of understanding, and the sight of Rob and Becky together were too much. I spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering aimlessly or sitting in the park until it got dark. Anything to avoid going home. One day, while sitting on a park bench, I ran into an old friend from middle school. We hadn't talked much in years, but she noticed I looked upset and sat down to chat. As we talked, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild my social circle, find new friends who didn't know about the betrayal, who wouldn't see me as the girl whose boyfriend left her for her best friend. Slowly, I started reaching out to other people, trying to forge new connections. It wasn't easy. My trust had been shattered, and it was hard to open up. But bit by bit, I started to find my footing again. I joined a couple of clubs at school, hoping to immerse myself in activities and distract from the pain. Through it all, my relationship with my family remained strained. I couldn't forgive my mom for her lack of empathy, her insistence that I should just be happy for Becky. My dad, though better, still didn't fully grasp the depth of my hurt. It was as if they wanted to sweep everything under the rug, pretending that if they didn't acknowledge my pain, it would disappear. Rob and Becky's baby was born in the spring. My parents went to the hospital to see the baby, coming back with pictures and stories about how beautiful and healthy the child was. I couldn't stand to look at the photos, the tiny face that symbolized so much betrayal and hurt. My mom placed one on the fridge, a constant reminder of everything I had lost. Apparently they fancied themselves would be grandparents. Our families had always been close, and if she had been having a baby with anyone else, I would have shared their happiness. But things changed drastically for me. My mental state plummeted, and it got so bad that on the day of my final high school exams, I packed my bag and decided to run away from home. I had been planning this ever since I first heard about their baby news. I saved up money, sold all my books, comics, gadgets, watches, and the little jewelry I owned. I told my family I was going on a trek with friends. They were so tired of my sulking that they didn't ask questions and simply said, "Sure, have fun." I left home, never intending to return. I moved to the next town, lived in a hostel, and waited tables to make a living. It was stressful and filled with immense uncertainty about the future, but I felt much better than staying at home. After a month, my parents started contacting me, asking when I would return. I had changed my number, so they emailed me, but I blocked them there too. They used other email IDs to reach out, so I told my sister I was never returning home, and asked them to stop contacting me. They kept trying, so I changed my email again. Eventually they seemed to stop. Living alone was challenging, but I navigated through it. I waited tables for 2 years, then took a receptionist job for another year, and finally landed a sales job that lasted for 3 years. During this time I met my husband while working in sales. He was a marketing guy. We bonded over our troubled family issues. He had lost his mom at an early age, and his dad married a teenage girl his age, forcing him to call her mom. After enduring gaslighting and verbal abuse, he ran away from home. We had known each other for just a year when he offered to fund my college education, which I could pay back later. He wanted me to do better in life. I accepted his offer and went to college, working part-time to cover my other expenses. I studied accounting and secured a decent-paying job right after graduation. On my first day at work, he proposed to me, and we got married a year later. We now have a son, and life is good. A month ago we went to Disneyland and bumped into my sister, who was there with her family. She had married Becky's brother and had a son with him. Hugging her son was surreal. I hugged my sister, and we both cried. She hated me for ghosting her. She and her husband apologized for not supporting me enough. I said, "Let bygones be bygones," and we enjoyed the trip together as a family. We exchanged contacts, and she made me promise to stay in touch. Later she texted me that Mom was asking for my number. I was unsure if I wanted to reconnect, but my husband advised me to make peace with my family. So I gave my sister the green light to share my number. Just an hour later, my mother called, sobbing. She admitted her mistakes and apologized for everything I had gone through. She was yearning to meet her grandchild and insisted I visit home with my family. I didn't say yes or no, but I am thinking about it. I missed one important point. My sister showed me pictures of my brother's children, and I stumbled upon a family photo that included Becky and Rob. My sister told me they got married 4 years after I ran away and had 2 more boys in addition to their first girl. I just smiled and said nothing. She wanted to say more, but seeing my lack of interest, she backed off. Update 1. Hey guys, sorry for not updating earlier. Let me start from where I left off. After a lot of contemplation, I decided to meet my family. My parents hugged me and cried, apologizing for neglecting my feelings. It was a bittersweet moment. My sister, her husband, and their kids were there too. Becky's brother also apologized and requested I stay in touch. It was nice to meet them all. We had grown up together like a family. My brother, who was 10 when I left, is now married and has a 2-month-old infant. It felt so good to hold and play with my nieces and nephews. We stayed for 2 days. The first day was emotional and beautiful. My parents met my husband and son, who were delighted to meet their grandparents. On the second day, while chatting with my sister, my mom came in and said, "See, I told you you would find a better man than Rob, and you did. You unnecessarily blew up the entire situation." My sister gave her a look and asked her to stop, but she continued, "That's okay, Charlie is over her past now. Look how happy she is in her life." I said, "Surely I am." She sat beside me and said, "Then why not make peace with the past, forgive everyone, and move on?" I replied, "I did make peace with the past, and have forgiven you all." She clarified she didn't mean them but Rob and Becky. She wanted me to forgive them and start talking so we could all hang out as a family like before. I asked why she wanted me to do that since they still hang out without me. She said it embarrassed them that I don't talk to Becky and Rob, despite their children being so nice to my parents. I responded, "But your other 2 children, my brother and sister, are nice to your friends. Be happy with that. Why bother me?" Update 2. After the reunion, I found myself in deep thought about my past and the relationships I had left behind. The meeting with my family stirred up a lot of emotions, but it also gave me a sense of closure that I didn't realize I needed. My parents' heartfelt apologies and their genuine desire to reconnect made me reconsider my stance on the past. My husband and I discussed it at length. He reminded me that holding on to resentment would only weigh me down, and that forgiveness could be liberating. I knew he was right, but the idea of reconnecting with Becky and Rob still felt daunting. A week later, I decided to call my sister. We talked about our childhood, our shared memories, and the things we had missed in each other's lives. It was a healing conversation, and I felt a sense of relief. I told her I was open to the idea of reconnecting with Becky and Rob, but I needed time. I started by sending Becky a message. It was simple, just a greeting and a hope that she was doing well. To my surprise, she responded warmly. She shared updates about her life and her children, and we slowly started to rebuild our relationship. Rob was more reserved, but we eventually exchanged a few messages. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. My family was overjoyed when they learned that I was willing to reconnect. My parents were especially relieved, and I could see the burden of guilt lifting from their shoulders. They had always hoped for a reconciliation, and it felt good to finally give them that peace. Over the next few months, I made several visits to my hometown. Each visit was a mix of emotions, but it gradually became easier. My parents adored their grandson, and seeing them bond brought immense joy to my heart. My sister and I grew closer, and our relationship became stronger than ever. I also reconnected with my brother. We had a lot of catching up to do, and it was heartwarming to see him as a grown man, now a father himself. His little daughter brought a new sense of happiness to our family gatherings. As for Becky and Rob, our relationship remained polite but distant. We interacted during family gatherings, and while we were not close, there was a mutual understanding and respect. It was enough for now. Reflecting on this journey, I realized that running away had been my way of coping with overwhelming emotions, but it was reconnecting and forgiving that truly healed my heart. My husband's support was invaluable, and his wisdom guided me through some of the toughest decisions. Life is unpredictable, and while my past will always be a part of me, I have learned to embrace the present and look forward to the future with hope and optimism. My family, despite all the ups and downs, remains a vital part of my life. We are not perfect, but we are together, and that is what truly matters. She insisted that I forgive Becky and Rob and rekindle our friendship. I refused, telling her it was none of her business. She started preaching about forgiveness and Jesus, then suggested inviting Becky and her husband for dinner. I warned her that if she did, I would leave and never come back. My siblings were also upset that Mom had told Becky about my visit. Mom defended herself, saying Becky's dad saw me through the window and must have told Becky, who then called Mom and asked her to reconcile us. Furious at this excuse, I went to my room. My sister followed me and mentioned Mom's strange obsession with Becky's family. She explained that last year, during a rough patch in her marriage, she mentioned to Mom that if her husband didn't stop gaslighting her, she might consider divorce. Mom freaked out and said there would be no divorce, no matter what, because it could ruin their friendship with Becky's family. This conversation made us realize that Mom had always prioritized Becky and her brother over us. When we were younger, we didn't mind because Becky was my best friend, and her brother was my sister's boyfriend. After discussing it, we returned home, and I almost forgot about the conversation until last week. My husband showed me a video of a middle-aged couple making out at a bar. To my shock, the couple was my mother and Becky's dad. My husband's work trip took him to the next town, where he recognized Mom but not Becky's dad. He recorded the video, knowing I wouldn't believe him without proof. Watching the video, I was stunned. I needed to talk, so I called my sister, who came over the next day. She was equally shocked. She hasn't told her husband yet, fearing his reaction. We're stuck. Do we tell Dad, or confront Mom and risk further betrayal? Update: my parents are getting divorced for obvious reasons. My sister and I spent weeks deciding what to do. I could vent to my husband, but my sister couldn't discuss it with hers, worsening her anxiety and affecting her marriage. We decided to involve our brother, hoping he had a solution. He was livid after seeing the video and confronted Mom in front of Dad. She denied it until he showed her the video. We might have acted impulsively, but at least our burden was shared. Our brother had always resented Mom for favoring Becky and her brother over us. He and Dad confronted Becky's mom, who was devastated by the video. The truth came out: Mom had been sleeping with Dad's best friend. Initially, they claimed it was a recent affair due to a midlife crisis, but their stories didn't add up. Finally, they admitted to cheating for over 25 years. Dad tried to hold the family together but became miserable. One day he came to my door, hugged me, and cried, saying he now understood the pain I felt when my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. Mom did the same to him. Dad called a meeting with me, my sister, and our brother. He apologized but said he couldn't forgive Mom and pretend nothing happened. Mom urged him to forgive and move on, but Dad proceeded with the divorce. We supported him. When Mom realized Dad was serious, she pleaded for one last chance. My sister, present at the time, gave Mom a piece of her mind. It was a huge family drama. Dad eventually served her the divorce papers and moved out. Similarly, Becky's mom filed for divorce and moved out. Now, Mom is alone in our house, and Becky's dad is alone in theirs. They might end up together, which could be a blessing in disguise for them. I'm stepping back from the situation to focus on my own family. The divorces have been rough on my sister, affecting both sides of her family, and she and her husband are going through tough times. Mom's fixation on Becky's family had always been a sore point, even more so now, as everything unraveled. My sister reminded me of how Mom had always placed Becky and her brother ahead of us. Growing up, Becky was my best friend, and her brother was my sister's boyfriend, so we didn't mind. But the blatant favoritism became apparent over the years, making us question Mom's motives. One incident that stood out was when my sister confided in Mom about the possibility of divorcing her husband due to his gaslighting behavior. Mom dismissed the idea outright, stating that no matter what, divorce was not an option, because it could jeopardize her friendship with Becky's family. It seemed absurd, but it highlighted Mom's priorities clearly. The shocking revelation came when my husband, during a work trip to a nearby town, recognized my mother at a bar, making out with a man. He recorded the encounter, knowing I wouldn't believe him without evidence. When he showed me the video, I was in utter disbelief. The man with my mother was Becky's dad. I felt a rush of anger, betrayal, and confusion. I needed to talk to someone, so I called my sister, who rushed over the next day. She was as shocked as I was, and we debated what to do next. Telling Dad seemed like the right thing, but we were worried about the fallout. We decided to involve our brother, thinking he might have a more level-headed approach. His reaction was anything but calm. He was furious, and immediately confronted Mom in front of Dad. Mom tried to deny everything until our brother showed her the video. The situation quickly escalated, and our brother revealed his long-standing resentment towards Mom for always prioritizing Becky's family over us. The truth came out during a confrontation involving our dad and Becky's mom. Both were devastated to learn that Mom and Becky's dad had been having an affair for over 25 years. They had initially claimed it was a recent fling, a result of a midlife crisis, but the inconsistencies in their stories revealed the long-term betrayal. Dad was heartbroken and struggled to maintain a sense of normalcy. One day he broke down in my arms, expressing how he finally understood the pain I had felt when my own boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. Mom's betrayal had mirrored my own painful experience. Dad called a family meeting, apologizing for what had happened and explaining that he couldn't continue living with Mom. He was determined to proceed with the divorce. We all supported his decision. Mom, realizing the gravity of the situation, pleaded for one last chance, but my sister, present at the time, was firm in her stance, expressing her own frustration and hurt. The divorce proceedings began, and Dad moved out. Becky's mom followed suit, filing for divorce and moving out as well. Now, Mom and Becky's dad were left alone, possibly to continue their relationship. This turn of events, while painful, brought a strange sense of clarity. Their obsession with maintaining a facade of friendship had hidden a deep, long-term affair that affected both families profoundly. I've decided to step back from the chaos and focus on my own family. The divorces have been especially hard on my sister, impacting both sides of her family. She and her husband are going through a tough time, trying to navigate the emotional fallout of these revelations. The ordeal has left us all grappling with mixed emotions, but it has also strengthened our bond as siblings, reminding us that we need to support each other through this difficult time. Hope their relationship withstands the strain of these circumstances and that they navigate this rough patch successfully. Thanks for all the love and support. I'll update the thread if there are any new developments. Now, let's move on to the next story. Story 2. Husband wanted to name our daughter Stuarta as the feminine form of his own name. After 18 hours of labor, I impulsively named her after our kind nurse instead. My husband 38M and I 36F are expecting our first child, a baby girl, in a few months. We were overjoyed when we discovered we were having a girl, but things have gotten complicated since then. When we first discussed names, the boy name was quickly decided Stuart Jr., after my husband. No issues there, it's a classic name with family significance. But for a girl, the situation became more complex. My husband suggested the name Stuarta. No, you're not having a stroke. His reasoning is that since Stuart ends in T, we can just add an A to make it feminine. I tried to explain why that doesn't work. It sounds more like a brand of furniture than a person's name. Our daughter would constantly have to correct people and explain the origin of her unusual name. He's adamant, saying it honors him while giving our daughter a unique name. I've suggested several alternatives, feminine names that share a similar sound or meaning to Stuart, names he's mentioned liking in the past, and even starting from scratch with new names. But he's fixated on Stuarta. I love my husband dearly and understand his desire to honor his family, but I can't imagine subjecting our daughter to a lifetime of awkward stares and endless questions. I also worry about potential bullying and the impact on her self-esteem. So, Reddit, am I the jerk for refusing to budge on Stuarta? Is there any compromise I haven't considered? Help a soon-to-be mom out. I look forward to your thoughts and hopefully some sanity checks. Edit please, no suggestions for other names starting with T. My husband clearly has a theme, and I need to gently steer him away from it, not fuel the fire. Comments. Popany 1993 NTA. Naming a child should be a 2 yes, 1 no situation. You need 2 yeses for a name to be chosen and 1 no to veto it. This works both ways. Personally, I'm not a fan of naming a child after a parent, as it puts pressure on the child to live up to their parent's legacy. It's less problematic for a middle name since it's only used formally. Why is he so set on Stuarta? There are so many beautiful names. Why not name the baby after the mother, like your name with a twist? It seems a bit misogynistic to only want the baby named after the father. Whose last name will the baby have? Maybe you could compromise by choosing a name that starts with the same letter as your husband's, like Stella, Sally, etc. Ensure the baby has a middle name to avoid confusion with male and other practicalities. Shell 37628 to add to this, what's his middle name? Could there be a feminine version of that that's less objectionable and actually a name rather than a weird mishmash of sounds? Lost random dude if you go by the meaning of the name Stuart. Which means guardian of the house. Perhaps you could consider names with similar meanings, like Vesta. Stacy is also an option, but I presume Op doesn't want to use that. Deleted. It's simple, he gets to choose the name when he pushes out the baby. Why should only he be honored and not you? Make sure to inform your nurses about this. I've read horror stories on Reddit where dads or mothers-in-law named the baby and signed the birth certificate without the mother's consent. NTA. Curious Catkins 96. Naming children to honor parents can lead to dysfunction. You're not just having a baby, you're giving life to a human who will grow up and interact with the world. Give them their own identity. Llama no more drama, this is why parenthood scares me. You're not just raising a baby, you're raising an adult who will interact with society for 70 years. Don't make it harder by giving them a terrible name. Princess or Ferocious NTA. Tell him he can only name one child after himself. If he names the girl Stuarta, he won't get a Stuart Jr. Why is it so important for him to be honored but not you? Remind him that baby names need approval from both parents. You both need to be able to live with whatever name you choose. Update. First, the good news: we have a beautiful, healthy baby girl. She weighed 7 lbs 4 Oz and already has an incredible head of dark hair. Labor was a marathon minus 18 hours, but the amazing nurses kept me going with ice chips and encouragement. Now for the not so good news, the name situation. Right before pushing started, things got heated between Stuart and me. The stress of contractions made him even more attached to Stuarta. He was pacing the room, muttering about family legacy, while I focused on breathing exercises. Suddenly, my water broke with a loud pop, startling everyone. The nurse, bless her heart, used the distraction to calmly start prepping for delivery. Everything after that was a blur of pushing and encouraging words. As the birth drew closer, the tension over the name resurfaced. Stuart kept bringing up Stuarta, but I was firm in my stance against it. Our lead nurse, whose kindness and professionalism had been a beacon throughout the labor, became a calming influence in the room. During a particularly intense moment, she softly suggested, "Let's focus on getting this baby here safely. We can sort the name afterward." Finally, after 18 grueling hours, our daughter was born. Exhausted but euphoric, I looked at the nurse who had been so supportive and said, "Her name is Emily, after the nurse who had shown such compassion and care." Stuart, in the heat of the moment, was too overwhelmed to protest. In the days following the birth, Stuart and I had several heartfelt conversations. He was initially upset about my impulsive decision, feeling it undermined our earlier discussions. But as he spent time with our daughter, he began to soften. He saw how the name Emily suited her and appreciated the sentiment behind it. We agreed that while naming our child is significant, it's more important that we are united as parents. Stuart acknowledged that Stuarta might have been a bit much and agreed that Emily was a beautiful name. We decided to use Stuart as her middle name, creating a bridge. As the most amazing head of dark hair emerged into the world, our daughter arrived, screaming her little lungs out. A wave of pure, primal love washed over me. In that moment, staring at this tiny, perfect human being, the name debate completely evaporated. There was no way I could call this beautiful little girl Stuarta. So, what did we end up with? In the haze of postpartum bliss, I blurted out the first name that popped into my head, the name of the incredible nurse who had coached me through labor, Ella. Yes, Ella. Not exactly the most adventurous choice, but in that moment, it felt perfect, strong, steady, and kind, just like the woman who had helped bring our daughter into the world. Stuart, bless his confused heart, just looked at me, then at our daughter, then back at me again. Finally, he let out a shaky laugh and said, "Ella it is. Thanks for all the support and hilarious Stuarta comparisons. Here's to sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and the incredible journey of parenthood." Comments. Tank words: don't name your kids something they have to explain for the rest of their life. It's a selfish indulgence by a parent, and the biggest burden you can place on a baby that's done nothing to deserve it. Ella might not be the most adventurous name ever, but it'll never be a negative for your kid. Good show rejecting Stuarta. Sunny Samantha: I knew a guy whose dad's name was Al. He got named Alex. His sister was Alice. His mom finally stepped in, and the third kid got a normal name. To be fair, none of them were memorable. I also knew a happy guy named Buddy Guy. I just want to name a kid something they'll find on a toothbrush or keychain. Smashed potato: imagine needing your child to be named after you so badly that you think anything even remotely resembling Stuarta is a good idea. Acceptable _ box score 7,500. Damn it, Stuart. If you're so desperate to have something named after you, why don't you go discover a new planet or something? Don't burden a child with a name like Stuarta. Acceptable _ box score 7,500. I truly cannot imagine naming my child after myself. I don't understand that impulse at all. I certainly can't imagine being so hellbent on self-aggrandizement that I doom my kid to a name like Stuarta.